Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Jersey Oddcast with Joseph F. Bernardo, Gabriel J. Donio, and me, Gina Rulo. How's your week been, guys?
Eventful. Rather eventful. How's yours been?
Similar. Not as chaotic as February was, but still pretty busy. How about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I'll join in the chorus of eventful. Glad that it's behind me,
Are
truthfully.
are you over the time change, Gabe?
Time change didn't bother me as much this year. I had other things to focus on, so I guess that's why. I don't know.
Oh,
Oh,
we'll call that a minor miracle.
absolutely.
I don't know that it was better, but
We hope you're awake for this week's episode.
I am here for it.
Excellent.
Awesome. I don't know if you guys saw, but the Hammonton School District is getting ready to do some strategic planning. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. The public is invited to participate in what the district refers to as an exciting in-person strategic planning initiative, along with neighbors, community members, friends, teachers, school district administrators, and students. Their hope is to create a shared vision for the future of the school district. They request that everyone comes together to share their thoughts, ideas, and hopes in what they term as a highly participatory process so that they can plan for the future success of all students. It is facilitated by the NJSBA Field Service Department, Michelle Kennedy, Field Service Representative. There will be 3 sessions. They will all be at Hammonton High School. The first session will be March 24th. The second session will be April 29th, and the third session will be May 19th, all of them at 7 p.m.
Do you plan on going, Gabe, Joe?
Probably not going to go, but I encourage anyone who has kids in that district to attend and be a part of the future of the district. There's the best way to put your stamp on something is to show up. So hopefully they'll go and be heard.
Yeah, I actually have a prior commitment for the first meeting, but I am interested to see what comes of it, and that will probably largely influence and inform my decision about whether or not to attend the second and or third sessions. But absolutely, I agree. It's not often that local governance, whether it's for the municipal side or the education side, really seeks the input of the public to shape the vision for the future. So, for anyone who is interested in participatory government, this is certainly an opportunity that shouldn't be missed.
I agree. I hope they put the first meeting online, YouTube, or wherever, so we could take a look at it, see what was discussed, or if they have a slide deck, if they could share that. So those of us who have commitments and we missed the first meeting, we can see what's going on for the second one and then decide how we want to participate. I also want to make sure that the school district is communicative about everything that's going on and shares with all of us what is said and what the people decide they want versus what the school district decides to go to, especially if they're not in alignment. And I think that's important so that if there's any hiccups in the future, the school district knows how to overcome them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
That's mine.
incumbent on the school district, I think, to have their minds as open as possible to what the public is saying to them and just to try and get a sense. You're asking for people's opinion. I always say when you do that, just be sure that you're ready to receive those opinions that you're asking for, because sometimes it may not be what you want to hear, but it may be something that's very important to the future of the district. Open minds. Let's see some open minds.
Yeah.
I saw last week that somebody posted on Facebook that it has been 16 years since Kessler Hospital closed.
Wow.
And it really hit me. 16 years. That's a really crazy long time. And it went by fast.
Yeah.
Gabe, I think you have some interesting perspective on that.
I was one of the last patients at Kessler Memorial Hospital right before it closed. And I was in the ER. And I was told that the hospital was shutting down and that I was among the final patients, if not the final patient, which was ironic because our newspaper at the time had been very vocal in trying to have the hospital remain open. It's doubly ironic now as we hear much news of hospitals in another state closing. Very similar situation, very similar news bulletins. And that was a kind of a slow death for that hospital. So I remember everyone did their jobs, even though it was coming to an end. They were diligent. Kessler employed a lot of people. It helped a lot of people. And it was a major part of Hammonton as a community and was a community within the community. So I think 16 years going by, what do I think back on is I think there's still a void. I think that it's been certainly there's been healthcare here that's come on. Take nothing away from that, but it's not the same as having a fully working hospital. And it remains a void in Hammonton, the convenience of being able to go across town and go to an ER and go to, if you had to check in, you had to check in. It was never a big hospital. We all know that, but it certainly was an asset, I think. And I do still miss it from the standpoint of many things, but it just mainly healthcare standpoint, I think your town is a better town with a hospital in it. That era has passed and we now move forward and it's 16 years later. And I think we all know there's a big difference between having a hospital in town and not.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you consider, yes, we have a very capable emergency department in town. But when you consider how long it takes now to transport from that ED to the closest hospital, that 20, 30, 40 minutes, depending on traffic, longer if they have to be rerouted, that can make all the difference when you're dealing with an emergency. And I think we've been poorer since the hospital closed. I really do.
I agree with that, and not only from a medical standpoint, but from a business standpoint. All the other little ancillary things that go along with having a fully operational hospital, all the services that they utilized in town, the people that were employed, and everyone who benefited that trickled down through there. It's been a loss. I was, like I said, surprised it's been 16 years. It doesn't feel like quite that long, but there it is. While I'm very grateful for all the healthcare that we do have in town, because we do have a strong amount of different practices represented in town. We have the emergency department, we have the imaging center, so we have a lot of those benefits. But like Gabe said, it's not the same as having a hospital. If you have a friend who's in the hospital and you want to go see them, you're driving 20, 30 minutes away. If you yourself need to go into the hospital, you're asking someone to come see you again, you're driving 20, 30 minutes away. There was something convenient about that. And I miss all the people that used to work there that we love seeing.
Yeah.
Some of us have since passed. Some I see occasionally in town, but it really was a cast of characters at Kessler Hospital, and I miss that. They were a good time and some really wonderful people that worked there and took care of our community.
Along those lines, that was another benefit of having a hospital like Kessler in Hammonton. Chances are you knew the nurses, you probably knew the doctors, and in most cases that made you feel better. Some cases you were like, I don't want that. I went to school with them. I don't want
Yeah,
them near me.
yeah.
But
Thank you. And they knew you, Joe, right?
yeah,
And Gina. That's the other part.
Yeah.
There was a comfort at maybe a bad time. And I know that included me at the end there. We were surrounded by familiar faces.
yeah,
And they knew you and they'd ask after your family or whatever. That you weren't going to get that at a larger hospital where you
no,
would maybe be more of a number. And I think that's the greatness of Hammonton in general. That whole everybody knows your name, to reference the old TV show Cheers. Everywhere you go, it's like that for a lot of people in Hammonton. And the good or bad, like you said, Joe, but I think
yeah.
largely to the good. And yes, Gene, a bunch of characters over there for sure. And I mean that in the best possible way, because that's a tough job to begin with, but particularly in the ER where a lot of us would experience the hospital.
Yeah.
But you said it best, Gina, the financial end of that too. And the hole that was blown in the local economy with the jobs and the money that went through that hospital that stayed here was never really recouped.
No.
And that's another sort of angle on it. And Joe, I think, like you said, the familiarity was a huge asset of that hospital. So not everybody loved the place, to be honest with you. Let's face it.
Yeah.
But I think now, if you think of it this way, if you are under, let's say, 21 or a certain age, you don't even remember it.
No.
You don't even remember that there was a hospital there. And I think that is a generation, just about 20 years. And to think that a generation now of Hammontonians, if you say Kessler Hospital, they just give you like, I don't know what that is. That's staggering to me because it was here from basically 40 years plus, and from the 60s
Yeah.
to when it closed in '09. So big loss.
Hammonton and several other South Jersey towns, and even into, I will say, Central Jersey, if we agree that Central Jersey exists, sits on top of the Kirkwood Cohansey Aquifer. The Kirkwood Cohansey Aquifer is a 17 trillion gallon aquifer of fresh water. It is a shallow water table aquifer, and that means it's just below the land surface in a lot of areas. This aquifer, a lot of it, is protected by the New Jersey pinelands. I've recently read about a petition that is going around to protect the aquifer in regards to a lawsuit that is happening that involves Hamilton's neighbor, Winslow Township. Gabe, can you give us a little more details?
Yes, the Pinelands Preservation Alliance is the one that was furthering the petition, and it is Winslow Township. The concern is Winslow Township, but the concern of the PPA is that Winslow Township is going to join this lawsuit that was brought by the Clayton Sand Mining Company against the Pinelands Commission. So at issue is the 17 trillion gallon aquifer that's underneath the water. This is from the Pinelands Preservation Alliance's their point of view. And I always look at this matter like this is settled. And that by that I mean in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of hue and cry about, look, the Pinelands, it's confiscatory and it's unconstitutional. And I get it. I mean, because the landowners did see their land devalued. But now, all these years later, decades later, look, we have all this open space. We have 1.2 million acres protected. We have 17 trillion gallons of aquifer protected. And so to me, the issue is the long view and the short view. So I think the question is, do you see it as anytime we give an inch, they're gonna take a mile regarding preservation of this beautiful gem, this great national reserve and the water underneath it. That's a great asset, tremendous asset. I tend to take the long view, and the long view to me is for preservation. So that's just, and I've felt that way because I've lived in Hammonton for 48 of my 51 years, and I like the way and the feel of my community. And I feel that the Pinelands Commission, because of what happened, has preserved that. Winslow is a different municipality than Hammonton. It has different rules and different things because of where it is. But the aquifer remains an issue. So we'll see what people get on this petition. It seems to be gaining some ground, but it's up to the Winslow Township Committee to make its own decision there, whether or not to join the lawsuit or not. But that's in a nutshell, when I look at it, I think about that underground, that water, that pristine water as a something you don't really want to mess around with very much. But that's just me.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, and my memory is going back to 7th grade when I had Miss Evelyn Penza as one of my teachers,
Ev.
I believe the Kirkwood Cohansey Aquifer is the third largest freshwater aquifer on the planet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And in her class, it was drilled into us the importance of the pinelands and the importance of the aquifer. And really, all you have to do is look around now. We've been in varying stages of drought since what, June, July? The aquifer is low as it is. If this lawsuit proceeds and if this lawsuit is successful, then that further endangers the aquifer. It further endangers our groundwater supply, and that endangers crops, that endangers water, city water that taps into the aquifer, and it doesn't benefit anyone except, like you said, Gabe, in the short term. If you were looking to develop a piece of property, okay, these restrictions have been eased, so now you can develop here, but it is to the long-term detriment of the entire area.
Yeah, and on that point, Gina, before you jump in, I just want to say I didn't remember to say this earlier, but John McPhee, in his wonderful essays that became the book The Pine Barrens, put up, and this is back in 1967 when they wanted to put a jet port in Chatsworth and a 250,000 person city, and that was seen as the height of development at that time. Massive jet port. So he wrote at the end of the essays and the end of the book. Meanwhile, it gets eroded bit by bit. And he says, like Leisure Town and this and that, and references that in 67. So here we are in 2025. And to me, here we are 60 years later, and we're still fighting this back and forth fight. And I imagine that's going to go on a long time. So anybody who does think it's settled, including me, always in the back of my head, I think there's pressures. And Joe said that they're individual or bigger.
For me, the problem is Winslow Township itself. They are such a split personality of a municipality. You have the one side of Winslow Township closest to Hammonton that resembles us in a lot of ways. There's not as much development. Their houses are more spread out. It really does look like it could be part of Hammonton. And then there's the other side of Winslow Township that has more box stores and more development and more covered ground. And I think that's part of the problem is that Winslow Township itself is not sure who they are in terms of their own identity. Hammonton knows who they are. Mullica Township understands its role. And I think Winslow Township's problem is that they're not sure. They have both. They have the beautiful open spaces and then they have the strong commercial development. And for me, maybe it's a little bit protectionist, but I really don't want any more development. I'm good where we are. I'd like right-sized development for the space that you're building on. We've seen these things where before in developments, even in Hammonton, where you're trying to build too many properties or cover too much of the ground on a smaller piece, and it does not work out. There's only so much land, only so much water, and we really can't be thinking just of ourselves. We have to be thinking about generations down the line and what we're leaving them.
Yeah.
And I always say I try to leave the world a little bit around me a little bit better than I found it. And I don't know that this will do that for Winslow Township and definitely not its neighbors who can't really do that development at all. So it's a narrow-minded point of view from, in my opinion, but I don't know Winslow Township's finances. So there may be some reasons that they need to have this level of commercial development in their minds.
I know that it is somewhere either within or right after Winslow, but I would be interested to see exactly where the Pinelands Reserve ends, and that may very well delineate between the commercial development in the last 20, 30 years and the rural side of Winslow, because it's almost like a dividing line, and I think that may be the edge of the Pinelands Reserve. I can understand from the township's point of view, okay, you can develop in some, but you can't develop in others. Whereas in Hammonton, we're a complete we're completely covered by the pinelands. You keep on going towards the shore, Mullica covered by pinelands, go down the line. But Winslow, I can see why developers would be like, why can't I do here? That's because this is part of reserve and you can't.
So
I'm
maybe
still against it.
Hammonton should annex that part.
Oh, Lord.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Look, this
Kidding.
lawsuit, the
Just
point of this
kidding.
lawsuit, it's commercial. Obviously, the sand company, it's commercial. But yeah, I think what you guys said is very true. There's two Winslows. There's the more densely populated Winslow, and there's the Rosedale and southern part, and Elm, as it is said around here. I don't know if it's still said that way, but look at it, the question is: are you willing to make short-term gains that are related to development at the expense of long-term environmental assets? And I'm not sitting here saying that every environmentalist is right about everything, but on this thing, again, I'll just say it again. I thought it was settled. We have a 17 trillion gallon aquifer. Water is not easy to come by the way it used to be. It seems like it's ever more an asset than it ever was. And we have 1.2 million acres of preserved forest above it. I don't know. I don't see that as a bad thing, and I don't think I'm in a minority. So
Yeah.
But
Well, we will see what happens. We'll keep an eye on that petition. So, Joe, I saw something neat. I saw that you had an article in the Catholic Star Herald. I love seeing when you get published. It's very exciting. Tell us about it.
Thank you.
nice job, Joe.
Thank you very much. It's the first in a series about the 150th anniversary of the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which, as I assume everyone who is listening knows, is this year, with the feast day being on the 16th of July. Don't care how you're supposed to say it. In Hammonton, it's the 16th of July. So the parish reached out. Father David asked if I would be interested in writing a series of articles leading up to it. We had a meeting with the diocese and the Catholic Star Herald and the Our Lady of Mount Carmel Society, and everybody was on board. And the first article is in this week's edition. It's also available online for those who don't get the Star Herald, and it basically gives a rundown of everything that is being planned this year up to and including the feast week. So it really tells you everything that you can expect, when and where and what's going to happen. And it was nice seeing my name in print like that again. So
We felt the same way. And I think what's great is that great exposure for you. Yes. Great exposure for the town. Yes. And great exposure for everyone involved with the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel and their 150th. It was, anyone who hasn't read Joe's article yet in the Star Herald, check it out because it'll give you a good sense of things. I have a question. 3 fireworks displays?
3 fireworks displays. Yes, the first one Sunday night at the high school, then of course on the 16th of July, and then they're having another one to close out Feast Week on, I believe, Saturday. So 3
Wow.
fireworks displays. It's going to be big. And it's interesting because I like reading history, and I like, as everybody knows, I like reading old issues of the South Jersey Republican. And even as early as 1880, they had fireworks for the 16th of July. So it is a
Oh,
long,
that's cool.
proud
Yeah.
tradition.
Yep. One display for every 50 years.
Oh,
That's what
that's
we're
going to
going
be
to do.
special. When is your next article going to drop, Joe?
We don't have a date for it yet. I'm currently working with the parish to craft the next one, but we're figuring one article about every 3 to 4 weeks just to keep interest leading up to, and to keep as much regional exposure as possible, to keep it in the forefront of people's minds that, like, hey, this is a big deal. Come out for it.
Oh, that's going to be super fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Gabe, in order for us to read Joe's articles in the Catholic Star Herald, what do we need? We need glasses. Where do we
Yes,
go?
if you want to see every word of Joe's thrilling prose about the 150th of the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, you need to get yourself to where I go, which is Hammonton Family Eye Care. See Hammonton Family Eye Care for routine and medical eye care for all ages, from glasses to contacts to eye exams and more. Visit Hammonton Family Eye Care at Peachtree Plaza, 80 South White Horse Pike in Hammonton. Call 609-567-7479 or go to hammontonfamilyeyecare.com.
Thanks, Gabe. I appreciate that. I saw last week that local attorney Chris was honored by the New Jersey State Bar Association. I don't know if you guys saw that as well, but his wife Kelly posted it, and he was honored with the Professionalism Award for Atlantic County. This is a great honor. Chris is a nice guy, really involved with his family. And to see him receive a professional honor like that, I think that reflects well not only on him, but also our community, that these are the type of people that we have residing here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a long tradition of attorneys being honored in Hammonton. You could go way back to Sam Donio, Sam Curcio, Clarence Mattioli, other people
Mm-hmm.
who are honored by the Atlantic County Bar Association and things like that. So Chris is the latest locally based attorney to have. He lives here. He's part of Hammonton, and great to see another Hammontonian doing well. And certainly congratulations to him and Kelly and the family on an honor I'm sure well deserved.
Absolutely. It is a major honor. Yes.
It is almost spring, and that means a lot of people locally are starting to think about their gardens. Not me, as we know, I have a black thumb, but
So
Waterford Township is having a seed starting workshop on Monday, March 24th, 6 to 7 p.m. at the library in Waterford Township. It's going to teach you all about best practices for your flower and vegetable garden, timing, grow lights, choosing your growing medium and containers. They're going to cover all the basics. Have you guys ever grown a garden? Do you have any success? It's not my thing. I'm a failure at it. Joe, I
Listen,
know you were a grower for a long time.
yeah, Joe's got a history of agriculture.
He
Yes,
does.
I do. And I have had success with home gardens. I did plant blueberry bushes when I moved into the house 8 years ago, give or take. And in hindsight, it's probably a good thing that our family sold the farm because they're dead. Yeah, I'm great on a tractor. I can fertilize. I can do all of that. If you want to get something to grow, that was not the field for me. No pun intended. So, my current profession, nothing I plant ever grows. So I'm right where I belong.
Yeah. And I'll echo that by saying, look, guys, look, I could kill a rock garden. Don't put me near the plants. Gina, at least there's two plants Gina is keeping alive by sheer force of will in our house right now, which is fantastic. And I've enjoyed seeing that. But man, oh man, I wish, look, great thing for all the people who want to get involved with seeds and things like that. It's great. But I would say I'm beyond hope when it comes to that stuff.
Fair enough, Gabe. Fair enough. There is a lot happening, and I saw that the town of Hammonton is hiring a part time grant person. Joe, can you fill in the listeners?
Absolutely. The town of Hammonton is hiring for a project/grant manager. They're seeking a qualified part-time individual. The responsibilities include managing grant funding, managing complex projects, and if any of them involve planting, then I'm not the guy to apply for it. Collaborating with project teams, complying with multiple rules and regulations, prioritizing requests and deadlines. This individual will work closely with the town of Hammonton engineering consultant to help move grant projects forward. They're anticipating a 16 to 20-hour work week. It's an hourly rate commensurate with experience. And the information on how to apply is on the town's website, and the deadline is March 28th.
For me, the town has worked with other grant firms before. I don't like the vague commensurate with experience. That doesn't really tell us how much we're getting into financially. If it would be a percentage of what they bring in, a contingency, that might be more fair.
Hmm.
But this open ended, it could be I work 20 hours a week, I didn't bring anything in. Is that really the best interest of the town? What is their incentive? If you tie it to a how much they bring in, then there is an incentive to do better and to really work to get those grants, in my opinion. I don't know.
That
I just really am uncomfortable. Then how do you budget for it as a town? How do you know if it's worth your time applying for? It just, again, a little open ended, in my opinion.
in general, and not specifically about this position, I will absolutely agree that it is, to say the least, frustrating when you are applying for a position and they don't tell you even the range, whether it could be $15 to $85 an hour. Okay, there's a range at least. But any position that is open, especially I would think in municipal government, because I know in like education, there are specific ranges that are required. And with municipal government, there's got to be at least a minimum starting point and specific ranges and so forth. So post the range. Now, I don't know if a government position would allow an individual to essentially work on commission. I don't have that
I don't
knowledge.
know.
And I'm sure there is work that has to be done during the week, paperwork wise, where you're not like out finding all these grants. So yeah, I may not have brought anything in this week. I did all of this work, but when it comes to salary, absolutely post the range.
My concern deals with the bank and how that happened. And now we're going to have a part time grant person and the rainmaking that is associated with what you guys are talking about if there is a commission or if there is a salary. You have to justify your salary by bringing in grants. I got a building on this street, and I got a building on that street, and I got a building that I'd love the town to buy with grant money.
Yeah.
Now, look, we live in the real world. So
We live in Hammonton. Let's be careful.
we
We
live in
do
a
we do
place
things differently
adjacent to
here.
the real world. But the point is that let's tread very lightly here, town council, because there's going to be a market for people who want the government to buy their land and buildings. We have already seen it happen.
Mhm.
So here we are as the new era that we're in. And that is an era that was wholly created by the town council.
And that is precedent now. Yeah.
Correct. So
Yeah.
if you're going to now hire someone part-time whose role is to get grant money, I'm going to assume that some of that grant money could just possibly go to buy more private property.
That
I
could
think I am well within my right to assume that.
And I'll be interested to see if this grant position works in conjunction with or in place of the grant firm that the town has used for a number of years. Are we going to continue our contractual relationship with them, or will this position then take the place of that firm?
Good question.
Great question, Joe. It's time for the odd poll of the week. Oddballers, we have a question for you, and we'll answer it ourselves too. But how often do you leave the borders of Hammonton? And I'm not saying the borders of 08037, saying the Hammonton town border. And for me, normally I work in Philadelphia 3 times a week, so I would say at least 3 times a week. Currently, due to a leg injury, I have not left the town as much. But Gabe, how about you? How often are you out of town?
I'm out of town most of the week. I leave town pretty much Monday through Friday, and occasionally on the weekends too. I'm an aberration. In my previous career, I almost never left town. I was working here, living here. So, but now 5 days a week at least, I'm out of town.
Joe?
Maybe once every 2 weeks, maybe.
You're such a Joe Bernardo.
Guilty as charged.
I work 5 minutes from home. I'll stop at the store on the way home. If most everything I need is within town borders, I don't like driving at night. I don't like driving out of town at night. I don't like driving in the rain. I don't like driving in the rain at night, out of town, any of that.
So you're not going to be a mailman.
Probably not. No. Rain, sleet, dark of night. No,
Yeah,
thank
that
you.
ain't happening.
Find somebody else. Although they post their salary ranges, so at least I know what I'm in
It's
for.
a little different than that
Yeah.
part-time
Yeah,
position for grants.
exactly.
I've got to dovetail off of what Joe just said because we had a recent person pass away, and in his obituary, it said he never wanted to work more than a few miles away from where he lived. And of course, where he lived was Hammonton. And I loved that. And he never did his whole life. He never did. I think it stuck with me because it was very important to him
Yeah,
that he lived and worked in the same place.
And I think that's ingrained in so many of the residents of Hammonton because, regardless of your ethnicity, chances are you come from mountain people. The Italians, the Spanish population, we're all mountain people. And we worked and lived in the same place. And then to go to the next town meant going down one mountain and going up another. And it was a trial and it was a travail. So that's who we are. If we don't have to go out of town, we're not going to do it because it's in our DNA.
For mountain people, we really do live in the flattest place ever.
That's the irony.
Yeah.
So,
We came to a coastal plain.
okay, balls, let us know in the comments how often you leave the borders of Hammonton. Is it once a week? Is it 3 times a week? Whatever it is, just let us know. You hear how often we leave. We're curious. The one place you don't have to leave town for is Rocco's Townhouse. And Rocco's Townhouse has our community calendar for the week. Gabe, can you let us know what's happening?
I want to talk about Rocco's, and Rocco's Townhouse prides themselves on being a spot where everyone can meet and eat. Delicious appetizers, entrees, burgers, and more, along with a full bar and plenty of craft beers on tap. Remember, everyone meets at the Townhouse. 21 North 3rd Street in Hammonton. Call them at 609-561-9384 or visit roccostownhouse.com. And now here's the community calendar sponsored by Rocco's Townhouse. Come to Rocco's Townhouse after shopping during downtown Hammonton Antique Week. March 25th to the 30th. Antique Week is a 6-day celebration of vintage finds, rare collectibles, and timeless treasures found in downtown Hammonton. Learn more online. Also of note, embrace the magic of the season's transition with an enchanting night hike through Cedar Run Wildlife Refuge in Medford on March 21st. For tickets, go to cedarrun.org. The Hammonton Home and School Association will be hosting a glow night on March 21st from 5 to 8 p.m. at the EC. Wear bright colors or white. Tickets are $5 each. Adults are free. Check out the Home and Schools Facebook page for more details. The Hammonton Lions Club Spring Fest is right around the corner. Taking place on April 5th, this family fun event will feature an egg hunt, bounce house, face painting, and so much more. Learn more on the Lions Club Facebook page and listen in and watch next week for more listings about the community from the Rocco's Townhouse Community Calendar.
Very fun. Earlier this month was the 40th anniversary of the release of We Are the World. As Gen Xers, this song really was monumental for us.
Yeah.
My brother had a giant poster in his bedroom of all the singers and had a little key of who was who. And then there was that Netflix, I think, documentary that came out last year. Loved it. Do you remember that song? Do you remember seeing the videos and everything? Did it impact you at all?
I can say on my end it did. We all knew it.
Yeah.
We all watched it. We were all transfixed by all the huge stars that were in it, from Bob Dylan and Springsteen to Cyndi Lauper, and everybody seemed to be there. But you know what I really remember about that era? You had We Are the World, which was USA for Africa.
Yeah.
And then if we're going to talk about the Feast of Our Lady Mount Carmel turning 150, if I go back 40 years, right around the Feast of Our Lady Mount Carmel was Live Aid.
Yeah.
And that was in JFK, now gone, stadium in Philadelphia, and I believe Wembley Stadium
Yes.
in London.
Yeah.
And I famously remember, I believe it was Phil Collins
Yes.
who took a
it was.
Concorde and shuttled between the two concerts
Yeah,
in the same day.
He played at Wembley, and then he jumped on the Concorde, and he was able to play in Philadelphia later that night.
So a lot of things gone. The Concorde is gone. The JFK Stadium is gone. But the memories remain, Gina, of that was an era where there was a lot of this, let's just have a super concert. Let's just have a super singing thing. We Are the World. I don't know if anyone of that era who was listening to music doesn't remember We Are the World.
Oh, no, absolutely. If you were alive and if you were conscious, you knew We Are the World. You knew what a big deal it was. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe, because this was common with music videos back in the day, when it premiered, there was also like a documentary at the time of how it came together. And then at the end of it was the premiere of the video, much like with Thriller. You had a 9 or 10 minute video, but you had John Landis's film about the making of Thriller before the video actually premiered. And I remember watching Michael Jackson talk about it, because let's be honest, back in the 80s we had 4 channels, and if Michael Jackson was on, that's the channel that you watched. You watched whatever channel Michael Jackson was on. I remember Quincy Jones talking about it, seeing Billy Joel with Huey Lewis, with Ray Charles and Cyndi Lauper, and I remember the dirty
Diana
looks
Ross.
that Cyndi Lauper got when she went off on that really high, that I'll blow a corpuscle if I try and hit it.
Yeah.
But there have been since then collections of artists, including, what was it? Was it Band Aid? Was that who did Do They Know It's Christmas? Was that the group that did it?
I think
Right.
Band-Aid did.
Yes.
Yeah, they did that.
Yeah,
And it was,
that
was a big one.
Yeah, but it wasn't We Are the World, because that was Michael Jackson and I think Lionel Richie wrote that song together. And
Yeah, all these things like Hands Across America and Farm Aid were derivative of that,
yeah,
but didn't quite rise to the level of that. Do you remember the phrase that was used before to get everybody in the room together, all these great stars. There was a phrase that was,
Oh,
I think there was even a sign, maybe. I don't know. I'm
I
trying to
can.
remember the documentary. It's a phrase you rarely hear here in town in Hammonton, but you don't remember? You don't know? Yeah.
I can picture the sign, but I can't see the
I
words.
believe the words were, and I hope I'm not getting it wrong. Check your egos at the door. Which, with a group like that, you kind of
Yeah.
had to say it.
Oh, you had absolute giants in that room, 100% giants, and everybody came together, and it's extraordinary. And I don't even know if you can do something like that anymore because I don't know if we still have the kind of giants that we had in 1985. I really don't know if we do. And if we do, it's because they've been around and were giants 40 years ago.
Yeah, it's a sad commentary that we hear a lot in entertainment, that we diminished over the last 40 years. We don't have the giants, and we still have the giant problems. So it would be nice to get a group of people together to help solve them. But I don't think we have that same deal.
No, we don't. I would
No.
say that 5 years ago when the pandemic started, because it's been 5 years for that as well, that you saw some little moments where some larger stars came out and they did some things online that were beautiful, but they were
Mhm.
small moments. They were not group moments like this. I would say the last time that I really saw stars get together in a way that was very impactful, where there's a concert after the attacks of September 11th, 2001, and you had a good group of musicians come together and they put together a concert. I believe I have the CD of that.
And even that's 24 years ago, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's nothing like We Are the World. And,
Yeah.
that song is beautiful and all the different voices coming together. When you have Waylon Jennings in the same room as Michael Jackson and Cyndi Lauper, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
but it makes sense in a very beautiful musical way. And because Quincy Jones was behind it, Harry Belafonte, I think, was one of the organizers, like, who said, we got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, you have those four really working for it. That's how you pull in those names.
Yeah. And
Again,
if
Kenny
Yeah.
Rogers being there. So weird. And I love it.
Yeah, it was completely cross genre, and Harry Belafonte was definitely there because one of the outtakes of the documentary, I believe, is the whole group singing Deo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You got
yeah,
to love that.
just
You'll never see
extraordinary.
that again.
No.
No, again, but a very special moment. And I do wonder whatever happened to my brother's giant poster, because I was just at my parents' house and I don't believe that is still hanging up in there. So I don't know what happened to that frame print. Oh, things that get lost to time when you move out of your parents' house. Oh, well.
Yeah.
In fun things that to do to help the community, the Hammonton Education Foundation is hosting a Dine to Donate on Thursday, March 27th at Twister Tavern in Folsom. This is for dine in only. When you go to Twister Tavern on Thursday, March 27th, 20% of your bill will be donated back to the Hammonton Education Foundation. You have to print and bring the voucher that you can find on Facebook to Twisted Tavern in order for this to count. This is a wonderful, very passive fundraiser that a lot of organizations do with different restaurants in the community. All you have to do is go out to eat. A lot of us do that. Not everyone is a great cook. So why not? So again, March 27th, Dine to Donate at Twister Tavern to benefit the Hammonton Education Foundation. So I read online that Lucy the elephant is not just there for my amusement in Margate. It actually had a commercial purpose, which I was totally surprised to read. She was built in 1881 by James Lafferty, and she was used to promote the sale of lots along the Jersey Shore in what was then called South Atlantic City. Thank you through jersey.com for that information. Potential buyers were guided up the staircase in Lucy's left egg and were treated to a 360-degree view from Lucy's howdah. Today, visitors can take a guided tour of Lucy to see the views of Margate, Atlantic City skyline, and the Atlantic Ocean. But I always thought she was just there for an amusement or some rich guy's thing that he could just build a giant elephant. I did not know that she had a commercial purpose. Did you guys know that?
No, and you always think you said she was built in what, 1881?
Yeah.
No, 18. Is it 1881?
Okay, so let's say
According to this website.
that's the Victorian era, and I don't know about you, but I don't normally associate whimsy with the Victorian era. Where hey, I know how to get people to buy property here. I'm going to build a massive elephant, and that'll bring the people. Because if you tried to do that now, you'd probably end up in a hospital. So
I don't know about
Like
that.
in
I
Winslow
mean,
Township, one of those kind of hospitals?
or what if we
yes,
got a grant for it? And maybe then we could build it. Look, I knew this story. Gina knows, and I actually know someone whose family owned it for literally almost 100 years after Lafferty, meaning he owned it for 6 or 7 years, and then this next family owned it for a long time, almost a century. And that's got to be pretty neat if your family owns Lucy
yeah.
the elephant, I would think, and that you get okay, it's 55 years ago, but you still remember it.
Oh,
So pretty neat. But I did remember it was meant to be a development tool, but then it got moved, right? And now it's in its location where it is now, and it's become an icon, and they do a lot of stuff with it. It's become really a featured attraction of the Jersey Shore, and people go. They just want to see this huge elephant, and it's been restored. Lucy the elephant, a great part of South Jersey lore, and
no
it's kind
doubt.
of cool that it's still going strong,
Joe,
fauna and all.
Will we have good weather to go see Lucy the elephant this week? What do we got going on?
It looks like it's a bit of a mixed bag, but since you've asked, I suppose that means that it's time for the Oddcast Forecast, according to the app on my smartphone, and sponsored by Ben Castone Landscaping. Call Ben Castone for all your landscaping needs at 609 561 3452. They're here to keep your yard looking great no matter what the season. Wednesday should be okay. We're looking at a high of 66 and a low of 41 and partly cloudy. Thursday, at the moment, it looks like there's about a 50% chance of rain with a high of 64 and a low of 41. And then it's going to cool down a little bit on Friday with a high of 51 and a low of 36. And again, partly cloudy. It'll be a little bit cooler. You can go visit Lucy on Thursday in the rain because it's mostly indoors. But just be aware if you decide to take a trip this week.
I am enjoying this early spring. I hope it lasts. If oddballs want to get in touch with us, how do they do that, Joe?
They can find us on Facebook or Instagram. They can email us at jerseyoddcast or gmail.com, jerseyoddcast at gmail.com, or they can call us at 609 444 6178.
And they can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podbean. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
See you next time.